Hello.
Well, hi. It looks like you're having to Zoom too.
Yes.
Busy day.
Yeah, sometimes it just works out better because we have another one tomorrow and then tomorrow is communications and customer service. So,
Well, I'm glad to see that committee's filling up. That's great.
yeah,
Very
Yeah.
good.
and Cynthia is retiring, but she's going to stay on the committee.
Wow. Gosh, she's too young.
I know.
Oh, wow. Well, good for her.
Yeah, she's excited. The next chapter.
Who's going to be promoted to take her place?
Well, we have Josh as the interim, and he's doing a
Uh-huh.
really good job. So
Awesome. That's really cool.
yeah, we've been cross training him with this in mind for a while.
That's really good. Okay. Well, I guess we're early. Nobody's around.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
there they
Flynn's
are.
there.
If anybody can hear me, did I get unmuted?
Hi,
Yeah.
Helene.
Yes, Helene.
Okay, sometimes I have trouble getting unmuted. Here I am. Anyway, I'll just wait.
Hello.
Flint looks like he's all by himself.
There's Julie and
Good.
there's Tracy.
Hello. I'm sorry. It's been a crazy day.
Dawn,
Hi.
any
It's been
word?
a long day.
Yeah, I mean, since 5:30 this morning, it has been nonstop. Do we have any word on the MIG? Is he
I
coming?
haven't heard from him.
Okay.
Or missed the meeting, so. We heard from Steve.
Yeah, I saw Steve and I saw Bob, poor Bob, flat tire.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, he sent an email to you and me. He had a
Okay.
flat tire on the 15. He's stuck. Fortunately,
Oh.
with Gopher Canyon and he said he won't be making it to the meeting.
I was working on a project in the other room.
Oh, I know. Yeah, you're just having a long lunch. I know what's going on,
We
Tom.
may not have a forum. No, well.
So yeah, we're down Steve and Bob. I was just a little worried about Kurt,
Oh, there's Bob Marnett.
yeah, also I was just a little worried about quorum, But we have Helene and
Julie, you're here.
me and Julie.
And Chad's
We have
here.
six on the,
Tracy's here, so that's the alternate, right?
right? So
We should be
with
good.
6 on the committee, is 3 a quorum or is 4 a quorum?
4 is a quorum.
4 would be a quorum.
I'm thinking it's half plus 1, right? That's what you're
Yeah,
supposed to
yeah,
have.
that's why it
So we need
Yes, it
4.
has to be more than half.
So yes, thank you, Helene. I'm with you. I agree with Helene.
Yeah.
And so it looks like Tracy, you're going to be called into action unless Meg shows up.
Got it.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, well, if Meg doesn't come,
Yeah, I have. Now, well, since we had a meeting, maybe.
it's weird reading minutes from November 2nd.
I know, it's weird for me not to have all my 22 minutes done.
I mean, I'm getting on in years. I don't have Alzheimer's, but I do have some timers and thinking back to November. I don't know.
You're still like. Engineering. I just started in November. Yeah.
Unless she's invited.
Yeah.
You keep their big working rates if they don't, so messed up,
Yeah.
right? Outstanding. So we've got a new project controls officer.
That's right.
All right, all right.
And I'll have to be kind of
Thank you for introducing her. I appreciate that.
waiting for the time.
Let's get no time.
We
to
keep
wait.
waiting, Chad, for you to be a river to your people, but I just don't know. I don't know.
Oh, boy.
Zoom in like.
Don't show up, they want to.
Oh, don't be afraid, Malik. You can You can play with the big guys here.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 3:30, so I think it's time to spool this thing up. So we'll start with a call to order and followed by a pledge of allegiance. Okay. All right. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, here we go. Outstanding. All right, roll call. Flint Nelson, Chair, here. Steve McKesson, we know is not here. Helene Brazier,
Here.
hooray. Bob Marnett is not going to be here. Mig Gaska, not here. Julie Johnson,
Present.
yep. So I think at this time, Tracy Largent, you present.
Here,
Okay. We'll probably end up seating you in just a moment here, Tracy. I think that's the way it's going to work. Item number 4. Instructions to allow public comment on agenda items from those attending this meeting via teleconference or video conference. If at any point anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment and have joined this meeting with their computer, they can click on the raise hand button located at the bottom of the screen. We will be alerted they would like to speak. When called upon, please unmute the microphone and ask the question or make comments in no more than 3 minutes. Those who have joined by dialing a number on their telephone will need to press *6 to unmute themselves and then *9 to alert us they would like to speak. A slight pause will also be offered at the conclusion of each agenda item discussion to allow public members an opportunity to make comments or ask questions. Item 5, seating of alternates. Until or unless Mig gets here, Tracy, we're going to seat you because we need a quorum. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. Item 6. Additions, deletions, amendments to the agenda. As always, I'll start with the staff and ask if the staff has any changes to the agenda they need to make.
None from staff.
Okay. Any committee members? Helene, Julie,
No.
No.
Tracy?
No.
Okay. All right. Item number 7. Public comment relating to items on the agenda. We got any written?
We did not receive any written
No
comments.
written communications. Okay. Item 8, approval of minutes. All of you have received in your packets the minutes that Dawn and her team have prepared. It was kind of a lengthy set of minutes, but nonetheless, and it harkens back to November 2nd, which was the last time that we met. So
I move that we
yes.
approve the November 2nd minutes. November 2nd, 2022 minutes.
yes, that's correct. Last year. So are there any changes or suggested comments or suggested changes to the minutes? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Helene made that motion.
I just made one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear it very well. Sorry to Helene. Maybe you could turn the volume up a little bit in here because, remember, I'm deaf. Remember, I got plugs.
Do you want me to repeat it for the record?
Yeah, no, you've got it. We assume it. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Helene moves and Julie seconds. The minutes be approved. Do we have to do a roll call because we're not all here? Dawn?
I think so. Let's do it.
Huh?
Let's do it.
Okay, roll call.
Member Brazier,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member Nelson.
Aye.
And alternate Largent.
aye.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is general manager comments as he comes steaming into the room, perspiring from running all the way down the hall.
Yeah.
Right. Tom, I think this is you all day.
I just got my steps in, but
Okay.
yes.
All
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I had to take a call from Alfred Smith, who I've been trying to get a hold of. So I guess the big news of this week is the competing proposals made in the Western water world, from the 6 basin states excluding California and the other from California. The 6 basin states put out theirs first, I think on Monday evening, and it calls for, holding more water at Lake Powell and for more cuts to happen downstream, including an accounting for all the evaporative and seepage loss, which amounts to about 1.5 million acre feet a year. It had some pretty decent proposals in it. but it's only 6 of the states. And so
It's only what?
it's only 6 of the states, not 7. And the Bureau wanted a consensus-based model to work off as they forecast going forward. Not to be outdone, the California through the Colorado River Board, which is now chaired by JB Hamby, who's the director out of Imperial Irrigation District, as well as vice chaired by none other than Mr. Jim Medaffer from the Santa County Water Authority, which is still astounds me. They came up with another plan. And if you look at the 2 plans, the 6 basin states have much more immediate reductions that bring the levels up faster. But should they and then level up? Now the California folks, I summed it up on Twitter as like, well, let's just keep the status quo. You know, they've offered 400,000 acre feet of some sort of conservation efforts, but you know, it's not nowhere close to the 2 to 4 million the feds are looking for. And that if things go real bad and Lake Mead gets down below power generation, is getting close to dead pool, then we'll do something. And it's basically, there was 2 options. One, follow the law of the river, which if any of you read The Water Knife, you know how that turns out. It's Arizona gets cut off and Phoenix is basically goes dry in a short order, and it's bad news. And that IAD gets to continue and everybody else gets to continue to do what they've always done. Or the other one is that they put out, and I think with an eye toward the Inflation Reduction Act money that was put in there, is something that they call VCCP, which I've given it the acronym. It's Voluntary Compensated Conservation Agreements, or VCCA rather. And so there's a couple wrinkles to this. They're calling it a voluntary. One of the reasons for this, and I did talk to somebody who was close to the negotiations, and they wouldn't confirm or deny, but I'm not far off. Within the quantitative settlement agreement, and this benefits San Diego County, I should add, but whether it's right or not is a whole other question. In the transfer agreement with IAD, if there are mandatory cuts of the river imposed externally, the Water Authority takes a pro rata cut, whatever the cut is. If they're voluntary measures, they don't have to take the cut. Now, IAD might choose to cut them, but IAD sells the water to the Water Authority for like $600 an acre foot, and they're selling it to other people for $25 or less an acre foot. And so it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that, hey, if we're going to cut our revenue here, let's cut it by the $25 an acre foot stuff rather than $600 an acre foot stuff. And so that's why the word voluntary is in there. But then they added the word compensated. They said, we're not even going to voluntary, you got to pay us. And so essentially, you know, the hydrology of the area, the atmospheric conditions, as anyone's been in the summer out to the river or to Lake Mead or Lake Powell knows that a ton of water evaporates, millions of acres evaporate out there. But they act like that doesn't happen. If the Colorado River Basin produced 15 million, let's say it did produce 15 million acre feet of water, and that came in there, at the end of the pipe, only 13.5 ever came out because the rest of it just disappeared. But they're acting like that never happened. And so they essentially want to be compensated for water that doesn't exist. And that's where I have the problem with it. And that's why I'm hoping the feds kind of shelve both plans and does something based on the reality of the situation. And I think personally, the most fair way to go about it is to take what the actual yield of the river is and faced with the reality that Phoenix is a city now. This isn't 1968. There's millions of people who live there, and we can't just cut them off willy-nilly. Everybody shares in the pro rata cuts of 15 or 20%, but IID is going to fight to the death because they want to get paid. And I get it. They have a water right that's been long established, but it's a right to water that no longer exists. And I think that you should take, everybody's got these rights that were based on 15 million acre feet. And we say, we don't have 15 million acre feet. So we're going to cut the pie the same way. It's just a smaller pie now. But their thing is like, no. Arizona's junior, you got to cut the pie, but we get to keep the same slice, but they get no slice or a very tiny slice. You know, that politically is not going to work out that well. And it really depends on how the reality is that the only hope here is that Congress would ever do something constructive and sort this thing out, as opposed to having it done through courts and through all these crazy agreements that have happened in the 2007 interim guideline, the 2019 DCP, and come after 2026. But the sense I'm getting that right now is that everybody's going to punt, hope for better hydrology, use the $4 billion in the IRA and pay off farmers to not use water, and do it again in 2026. And we'll be right in the same spot, having the same discussion. And, it's one thing to pay somebody for the water right, but they're not buying the water right from them. They're going to lease it for a given water year, and then they get it back again later. But the sheer fact of the matter is they've given out more water than exists. And until we reconcile that, we're stuck. So stay tuned.
That's all very complicated. Thank you. That's all
I
very,
specialize. in
yeah, right. Thank you. And that's all very complicated. I guess the only question I have is this whole thing about being compensated, but paying money does not put more water in the barrel.
They just fallow land, or they put some farmers say, yeah, I'll take $800 an acre foot not to use my allotment this year. And some of them make more
I see.
money than they do on the crops.
I see.
And so it's, as usual in situations, you follow the money. And
I
one of the things that Senator Sinema pushed through to get some of the final votes for that IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, was to get this money thrown in there to deal with the water situation. And it was, they're trying to get votes, and they're throwing pork in for all kind of people. And hey, hats off to her. She put it in there. It's a pot of money the Bureau has to have. My sense from talking to different people involved in the negotiations is that the feds don't want to have to pull out what we all like to call the federal hammer and sort this thing out, because they know they're going to get sued, right? And this thing's going to go to the Supreme Court, as many other cases have. And with the court that's out there now, it's hard to see how they'll look at it. From a person who deals in science, or likes to think I deal in science, as opposed to politics or law, there's a reality that can't be mistaken here. And everybody can see by the decline of the lakes that we've been taking out more than goes in for 20 plus years. And until we stop taking out more than goes in, nothing's going to get better. And
money's not going to change that.
well, I think some of these people think they can, or they know they're going to get paid in the short term, and we'll deal with that later. But it's like they said that in 2019, they've said it 2007, 2003 QSA agreements. The lake was almost full then. Boy, that QSA agreement worked out great. No, actually, it failed miserably because it didn't account for changes in hydrology that didn't produce, on average, the amount of water they're taking out.
Well, I'm still kind of there with Helene that, if we start paying the farmers not to produce, I understand that, because these people have businesses and they built them up over a period of time. But if the way that little scheme works results in payments into perpetuity, then the farmers are never incented to change the land use out there and figure out something else. It would seem to me that if we were going to compensate the farmers who give up the use of water, which does put more water back in the barrel, then maybe it should be a declining fee schedule of payments so that they are incented to figure out something else to do over time, rather than just this for existing into perpetuity.
Yeah, and I would offer another reality for looking to the future, at least for coastal Southern California. Arizona, let them work for where we are. I think if we're going to get billions of dollars from the feds, we shouldn't blow it on paying somebody not to grow for a year. They should take that and fund desalination plants here on the coast. Fund
Amen.
projects, fund those things. Deal with CEQA so we can actually build these things without getting sued. Nine Ways Sunday, get rid of some of the insane rules around them. But at the end of the day, the technology is there. Yes, it's energy intensive, but that can be mitigated with more solar and wind in the desert or whatever. But it just can't. The cost of it can't be borne on the ratepayers here, but you can create supply, just like the feds paid to build Hoover Dam. This is like building a whole new Hoover Dam that's going to benefit everybody in the area. And I think that as Bill Hitt you guys remember Bill Hitt, Don remembers Bill Hitt when he came in here and I asked him, Bill, what's the future of water? He says it's not imported water. And he's probably, I don't know if he's still around, but he's in his 90s at this point, late 90s, maybe late 90s. He said, you know, it's going to be conserve, reuse every drop we got, and desalination. And he's spot on, because I think that's the future. Because if we think there's some future for us to get water from the Colorado or do something stupid like build a pipeline, another pipeline out there, which would be just like the most insane thing ever, or even the Sierras for that matter. I mean, we can probably rely on some amount of water from there, but it shouldn't be our primary source. And until there's federal money for that. And I've met in the last 2 weeks with our state representatives and federal representatives telling them, we need you guys to fund this stuff because it can't be done on the backs of the ratepayers, but it's critical to water supply and the economy of this region. And unless and until we do that, because the new cost of desal water is gonna be $4,000 an acre foot after they're finished with their project. And, you know, $4,000 an acre foot water is just crazy. But if the feds were to kick in the billions to get it built, and we're just paying the marginal electricity and operating expenses, then we can produce it at a more closer to what our current costs are for imported water. That makes water, right? That 4 billion doesn't just delay its use for a year, it makes new water. So I think that's where the focus needs to go in the long range, though.
And that much money would pay for enough desal capacity to take care of our needs down here? Strikes me that would be
they
a
spent about
lot.
$1 billion to build the one that produces about 15% of the supply. And then that's before City of San Diego rolls off, and everybody builds their own pure water projects as people are working on, and you build
So it-
3 more that size.
So it's
3 or 4
feasible.
more.
So it's feasible.
That could deal with San Diego County. And then we're just like, hey, Phoenix, you guys work that out on your own. We're cool.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Is that it, Tom?
I think that's enough for today.
Okay. Item number 10, engineering and CIP project program manager comments, Chad.
Yeah, so I'd like to introduce Colette. You knew you were getting introduced. Colette Barrow. Colette started here. It's been almost 7 weeks. Almost 3 months. Oh my gosh. Okay. Time flies. Sorry. 3 months. We haven't met
Jeez.
in the 3 months, so she has not been introduced to the committee yet. Colette was hired on as an engineering analyst too. And Delia's position was reclassed. So Delia and Colette are splitting duties and sharing the load. And it has already been an immense help to the engineering department. She's been helping operations. So welcome, Colette.
Good. Welcome. And
Everything else is on the agenda.
Okay. And thank you for attending our meeting. Thank you. Okay. Roberto, item 11, operations manager comments.
I just have 20 items, so I'll get through them as quick as possible.
All right. Talk fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to kind of bounce off of what Tom was talking about with the water issues with Colorado, and people are asking all the time, what we've had in these atmospheric rivers, we're getting tons of snowpack in the Sierras. Right now, 10 out of the 17 reservoirs in the State Water Project are at their historic levels. So the waters come up or higher, but that doesn't actually help the Colorado River. So the snowpack that we need has to happen in eastern Utah, western Colorado, and like southwest Wyoming. That's what's going to help the Colorado. But what this extra water in the State Water Project, what it does for us is when they get too much water historically up there, they will.
Sorry. Let me just turn this off.
You can answer it if you.
No. I can't make it stop. There. I am so sorry. I meant to put that on mute. So sorry.
So with the State Water Project, historically, what they do when they have too much water in those reservoirs, they're going to release it. They'll send it down to Southern California and we'll get that water. So they'll decide on what the blend's going to be. So it'll be a reduction on how much Colorado River water we get. We'll get more state project water. So in the very, very short term, it helps a very, very tiny little bit. But a lot of people are like, oh, we're out of the drought and life's great because we're getting all this water. And that's not the case. So just wanted to piggyback on it. Does that sum it up about right, Tom?
Yeah, I think that the more, especially for Metropolitan, who's the main driver, the Water Authority always says that they get their water from the Colorado. But as you recall, the last real wet years we had in 2018, we went on to 100% state project water here for 12, 18 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that we didn't see any Colorado here. All that water stayed in the lake. And something along those lines, maybe not that magnitude. If we get a few more ARs here, over the next, through the end of March, it might happen again because they got to put that water somewhere, and there's gonna be a big impetus to leave more water in the river so that they can help do that. But those cycles change, and then we'll lean back on the Colorado later. It's a cycle that doesn't work.
Speaking of rain, that weekend, January 13th, we had 4 to 5 inches, depending on where you were at. Our wastewater system almost got overwhelmed. We didn't have any spills. We had a crew varying between 4 to 6 guys working almost from the time it started hitting on Saturday all the way through Sunday night. And what they were doing, it was actually shutting down sewer lift stations to hold flows, because we were just pumping so much. We had an intrusion of rainwater into the sewer system. And that happens when you get a lot of rainwater at one time. So it was a very short amount of water, time for a lot of water. But we prevented any spills. We hired a tanker truck to actually start moving sewage for us. So that worked out pretty good. But it was just crazy weekend that weekend.
Yeah, I think that a tip of the cap to the guys, and Robert was in communication with me that weekend. But the other thing about the third of the station is it also has a very large wide spot, the largest one that we have, and that'll become helpful. Obviously, getting the sewers that are in creek beds that were built back in the day when that was the thing to do out of there over time is another key element here.
Right. And the Campus Park West project, we met with them, was it yesterday or the day before?
Yesterday.
And so that's a pipeline over there that'll get moved out that we actually were looking at to line. So we're not gonna line it. March 25th, mark your calendars. North County Fire's putting on a symposium at Fallbrook High School at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's a Saturday. And it's a fire symposium, and they're inviting Rainbow Water, FPUD, SDG&E, the Sheriff's Department. And I think the goal of this is to let the public know what all the agencies are doing preparedness wise and how they can respond better, than what we've done in the past. They're still having meetings on how this is all going to go down, but that's for anybody that's listening. If you want to attend, put it on your calendars. Let's see, ISO, the Insurance Services Offices. It came up in the last board meeting, and I've reached out to some representatives from ISO, and the question was, how does the heli hydrant help reduce or could it help reduce insurance costs for
Or even
our
availability.
ratepayers, right? Or yeah. And I spoke to an ISO rep, and what he told me is he said they're more concerned with fires that originate inside homes and how those fires are mitigated inside a home. That the heli hydrant's there to put out vegetation fires. Our rating on a scale of 1 to 10 is what's called a 3X. Number 1 rating is the best rating you can get. The X in that 3, he said if we could get rid of that X would maybe help out the insurance companies, but they don't even what they look at with ISO is a very small portion. Now they're looking at the fire maps as well. So where the wildland interface is happening in the county. The X part of that 3X is basically how many hydrants, homes that are more than 1,000 feet away from hydrants. So I'm thinking in my head, well, we can solve that problem. We're in the business of that. But then you got to remember, ISO works with the local fire agency with North County Fire. The North County Fire covers 2 different water districts, right? FPUD and Rainbow. So we'd have to be on the same boat of music, probably multiples of millions of dollars to get more hydrants in, and that'd be a very small portion. So North County Fire is going to send me their ISO report, and so I can look at it and see what's going on. But there's a lot more to it than just throwing a couple heli hydrants or adding another 1,000 fire hydrants. There's a lot more that's going to have to take place to lower that rating.
Robert, can I add something to that? Because I did speak to Chief McReynolds Monday afternoon or Monday night. Monday night. He called me on a different topic, and I was describing to him your conversation that you related to me on the ISO thing. And he says, the insurance companies, as they've talked to them as well, obviously they get a lot of heat. They're looking at the state wildfire maps as much as any kind of ISO rating of the fire department, because you could have the best ladder truck and everything else, but Santa Ana comes through the big old storm. It's
It's easier to
Cinders
get-
for your house.
It's easier to get a better rating. The big cities get the ones and the twos. Because they have all the equipment, the communication, they're not in a wildland interface.
Robert, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
There's something that rings very hollow about the feedback that you were given about ISO. Because I don't believe that people were experiencing large numbers of insurance companies cutting off their insurance or no longer writing for their area because we've had thousands of fires that started in a home. This started because we had brush fires that took out whole swaths of homes. And it just sounds to me like, I won't use the word lying. I'll just call it, sounds to me like a lot of creative mendacity here. This doesn't ring true to me.
I think there's a disconnect especially in our areas between where normally your insurance availability and costs had an ISO rating, a strong relationship. But now with the different wildfire maps the states are putting out and wildfire severity, hazard severities, the insurance company are looking at those more and they're saying whole swaths of people like, hey, we're just not going to insure you. And so it stinks. And people are paying many thousands of dollars for homeowners insurance
If they can even get it.
if they can even get it. Well,
Right.
there's California has a
The-
backstop plan,
yeah.
but it ain't cheap and it ain't great.
It ain't cheap and it
And
ain't great.
it's a lousy situation. Insurance companies are there to make money.
But
And
in the end,
Actuarials go, yeah, that's a bad risk.
maybe with the heli hydrants, we can prevent some homes from burning down, right?
I think that's going to be an education to say that, hey, in the urban wildland interface, if you've got heli hydrants dotted all over, the odds of these things getting out of control is way lower
Right.
than if you don't.
Right.
But that has to be proven over time, right?
Unfortunately, you need fires.
Well, yeah, we've been lucky since knock on wood, since we put that
Since we
thing out, it
and-
hasn't had to be used in an actual fire. It worked perfectly.
It's Murphy's
Right.
Law, right?
Well, and the comment I made was not so much about in support of more heli hydrants. I think that's a very good thing and we should do that. But I just was responding to the macro view that I think we're being given aerosol.
I'm still trying to chase this down and learn more about it. So this was my first conversation with the ISO person. So I learned a few things. But
just defies common sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll chase it to
Unless
ground.
you're-
Never mind that the power companies are evading any responsibility for preventing some of these fires with the way they do business.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that too.
There's no doubt.
It's all about insurance companies being able to turn a profit. And
Yeah.
when whole neighborhoods get wiped out, they start going, yeah, we'll pass on it.
And I get that. I mean, I get that, but doesn't help our ratepayers.
Okay, so I only have 16 more items.
I thought you
I'm
were
just kidding.
joking about
I'm just
this one.
I'm done. Thank you. Poor Chad.
Done?
Ahmed's already,
Okay.
Ahmed's
All right.
already bumped all my agenda items.
Okay,
Done.
item number 12. Do we have any comments from committee members?
Uh,
Helene, you got anything?
No, thank you.
Julie,
No.
Tracy? Okay. I just want to make one comment. And it's a thank you. Chad and Robert took time out from their busy schedule back in December. Of course, we haven't met since then, to sit down and spend some time with me on how we assess construction progress, on project progress, construction projects, progress, and I was particularly focused on the methodologies we use or the practices we use for calculating estimates to complete a project. And what I heard from those two guys, and I'm glad that we did not have a big meeting with all kinds of project managers and whatever, was that there is a very rigorous process in place, which is both confrontational and consultative at the same time, in terms of determining how much money a contractor has earned, whether it's a consultant or a construction contractor. And that the staff seems to have a very balanced and focused way of getting at that information. They seem to be very questioning in terms of asking the right questions on where things stand. And And we certainly can look at our recent history of change orders, which normally change orders are an indication that we do not have a good assessment process because we are either writing bad specs or we're not administering well in the field. And what we see is that we have a very low change order percentage. And some of them were planned to be that way, such as the way we dealt with change orders on Amanda's project with the rock, where we said we're going to do it this way. And we know going forward, there's going to be more because of the rock. And so I just wanted to tell the staff that I'm very grateful for them spending the time with me, and I want to compliment the project managers out there who are administering these jobs and giving us what I perceive to be very good results. And I think the one thing that also came out of the discussion was that if we in the future start to look at doing more projects in-house, I think I think Robert is right on top of the requirements that we need to place upon ourselves to execute with the same exact vigor on our own internal work as we would with external work. And that, of course, would also apply to the extent that the engineering department does design engineering work for certain kinds of jobs. So I just wanted to thank everybody and to compliment the team. I think there has been dramatic growth in expertise and execution since I had the opportunity to join this committee back in 16, 17, 18, whatever that year was. And there has just been tremendous growth in expertise and in quality of work. And so I just want to pass that on. Okay.
Thank you, Flint. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, board action updates. We've had a couple of board meetings since the last time we met, and I'm not sure. Did we have any items on the board calendars that?
Well, we didn't meet in December, so we
Right.
had the November meeting. I don't think we went that far back. I do have the updates from the January meeting. though.
Right.
Would you like those?
Yeah.
Okay. The January board meeting had one action that pertains to engineering, and that was the discussion and possible action to quit claim easements for the Bonzo Oaks development. That was passed by the board and I believe has since been executed. Working on it. So that was the only one. Yeah, December was no meeting, and November, I don't recall those. I just remember I can get those if the committee would like.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. We had this dark period where we all went dark.
Yeah.
And so rather than chase our tails here, we'll just pick up now
There you go.
and we'll go forward, moving forward. We're always moving forward. Okay. Item 14, appointment of chairperson and vice chairperson. Given that Steve is not here, is this something that we are obligated to do now, or could we wait a month on doing this, Dawn? What's
It's
this?
just been a year. We can put it off for a month if we need to. You guys were appointed. in
I think you
February.
should appoint Steve to something in abstention. Sorry, I'm just being a troublemaker. It's been a long day.
Both of you are appointed in February 2022, so it's just the annual. If we need to wait till he's here, we can wait till you want to.
Because without Mig and without Steve, I'm just thinking in terms of a little due process.
Sure.
I don't know. Helene, you have been with us for a long time. Do you think it's okay to wait?
We have done these meetings either with or without a full complement of members. It's generally pro forma, and 99% of the time somebody moves that we retain the current structure. And there's always a possibility if somebody wants a change, they can bring it up and put it on the agenda.
Well, is that a motion, Helene?
Well, I haven't made one, but I will do so. I move we retain the current structure and period. That's it.
And I second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Julie.
Okay, thank you, Julie. So Helene has moved and Julie has seconded a motion to retain the current chairmanship and vice chairmanship. And so Dawn, do we probably need to do a roll call
Yeah,
because
we
we're
do.
not all here? Okay, go for it.
Member Brazier,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member Nelson,
Aye.
and alternate Largen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Chairperson, Nelson, can we go back to 13 real quick?
Yeah.
I misspoke. Thank you to Don. There was no November board meeting. I don't recall the December board meeting items, just for clarification. Thank you, Don.
Okay, item 15, meter accuracy and water loss presentation from IT and operations.
Well,
Okay.
I'm going to give you the presentation. And so I want to, just before we get started on the slides,
This is going to basically, is this going to relate to the meter replacement program? Is this on the financial side or is this on the?
all. of the above.
Okay, all right. all
So
right.
every year we do our water loss audit, and it's done every year at the end of every fiscal year. And as I've reported back to this committee in the past, it's the part where we aggregate all of our reads and all of the purchases, and then we try to normalize them to the same date. And then Ahmed has a big database and we calculate, all right, how did we do? And we were in the 7 to 8% range of losses
Mhm.
before. We were coming down. We were getting down 5.5, 4.5, 5. And this year, when the data came out, we don't actually start calculating it until about August, because we have to get the June and July reads done because it's used as part of the calculation. And some of the early data in August came out and I'm like, this seems a little off. And so we started digging on it. So if you could go to the next slide. So as we what I'm going to talk about today is the water loss, what the impacts are, and then looking at an analysis of what happened. So next slide. So we look at every year purchase versus sold, and as the chart on the left is harder to tell, but that's our historical, that we always purchase a little more than we buy, but it was in the 8% range, which is a significant amount. And so the What's Up project, which we started in 17, 18 range, as you can see, the water loss is going down, and that thing's blocking us in the bottom there. I don't know if you can get this thing here. Yeah, as we get over to these later out fiscal years, I guess my head's in the way. I'll move over to this microphone. You can see that started ticking back up, and we're like, whoa, something is very strange here. So next slide. My initial assumption was that we did something wrong when we installed the meters, because every meter size and the different types of meters have different numbers of dials on them. And if you get the truncation wrong, when you set it up, it'll read 1/10. And we saw some that had 90% reduction. Like, well, that's 1/10. That needs to be a truncation error. And so Ahmed and I did a lot of work, and this took a little while to dig into the data and start taking a look at what's in the billing data. And we're like, boy, this looks right. And then we started looking into the transfer of the data from the meter to the meter reading the handhelds and the cars in the trucks, from there to the system in here that accepts that, from there into the bill, and spent probably 6 weeks just digging, because I was pretty convinced these are brand new meters. What could be going on here?
Right.
It's got to be a data error, and systematic data handling errors is one component of the AWS water loss model that you got to look at. And we were convinced it was. And then, so we started looking at it deeper, and we couldn't find an error. That every one we checked, and all the sampling we did, we didn't look at each account, but we would take a whole bunch of them, and Ahmed could do some of this programmatically. Some we took just one by one, look through it each step of the way. It was all coming through correctly, field verified. And we're like, boy, this is weird. So we started looking at customer meters that were large users, and people use 2 or 3 units a month. That's not where you're losing this kind of water. So we looked at our larger accounts, and then we've looked through those and found that we had a bunch of them that dropped tremendously. And we calculated that. We looked at ones that had been in there a little while, because it's hard to tell if we installed a new meter on somebody's house in September and we read it again in January, say, man, their consumption's dropped by 90%. Well, that's because it started raining. So if you don't have a long enough time period, it's hard to average. And so we looked at all the different meter sizes. So here's another chart that shows the water loss versus the meter installs. And as you can see, the green chart shows the number of meter installs. And as we started the big ramp up, and we got those installed during that fiscal year. And so these are points based on fiscal years. So it was done beer those times. As we did that big chunk, when we've really got going on What's Up, the water loss started ticking back up. And it was striking to us, how can that be? So we're like, uh-oh, we got a problem. It's not our data. So there's something going on the meters. So next slide. We looked at the different classes of meters. And we found that the 2-inch meters is 42% of that water loss. It's about 2,000 acre feet of water. So this is a lot of money. And it also, as retroactively as we're going through this also impacts some of our financial performance because we had expected lower water loss. We had budgeted a lower 4 or 5% water. I don't I forget what we did at Tracy, but it ended up being 7 to 8%, that range. And so that's a, 3%, but 3% of money is money.
3% of a big number is a
Yeah,
nice
big number. But you can see it spread. The biggest cohort is a 2-inch, then the 1-inch next with the 1.5 meters behind it. And so, the 5/8, 3/4, and some of those are, and the 3-inch meter, there's only a couple of those. It's not as much, but they're all important. But we're looking at these big chunks and say what's going on. So next slide. So Robert and the team visited a bunch of high usage consumers grows. We're saying, hey, did these people cut down their grows? Right? Or maybe there was a change in the land use. Maybe, but that won't do it because we bought the water. Because this is based on comparing what we bought from the Water Authority, what we did, and this was confounding us for some time. We're looking at indications of reduction in usage, but that wouldn't be the issue. And then one of our techs out there, Carlos, was working on there was a leak at a backflow device or something that he was out there, and he was looking at the meter, and the water's gushing out of this pipe like full steam, but the meter is going, tick, 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 tick. It's not performing well. And we're like, whoa, at these super high flows. So to predicate this, when we made our meter selection we looked at a lot of different meter brands, and we had the meters, we tested them we looked at our bench tests, and they all come factory tested. The AWA has standard flow rates, right? That they tested, low, medium, and high. And on a 3/4 inch meter, I think the high flow rate is 40 gallons a minute, or is it 40 gallons a minute? Or
50,
55,
55.
the high, the AWA top end. Yeah. So they maybe it's the 5/8 that's 40, but but anyway, they all have different high end flow rates. And all the meters, and we had some pulled and tested. We had McCall's third party tester. They test them. We take those meters out that we're thinking, they test them. They say, yeah, this meter's running fine. And we're what? What do you mean the meter's running fine? Well, when Carlos noticed this one meter with a really high flow rate going through it, struggling, we went, whoa, wait a minute. And so we pulled some of those on, put them on our test bench. And we, I don't know if the next one is the video. Oh, yeah. So I got to before we show you the test, Rainbow customer usage for some of our customers, not for all of them, for a small minority of our customers, they deviate from the norm of what AWWA and everybody else in the world uses. We find this when we're doing our rate modeling, as we had our meeting with Andrea, we were talking to her about this, how we modeling this stuff. She goes, you guys have such crazy outlier users that we just don't see elsewhere, because we have some customers that use so much water for smaller meters that it's crazy. And because, high water usage is commonplace for larger lots, high system pressure increases those flow rates. Many customers exceed all these things. That's what we're finding here. At least that's the hypothesis, the only hypothesis we've come down to, and that impacts meter accuracy. So we wanted to validate that. And we also trying to find solutions. So Ahmed, do you have the videos? I think, yeah. So here's a series of videos of the testing we did. We set up on our test bench down there, and we have our test bench on the right. There will be 2 cameras. It shows a calibrated flow meter. It's kind of an old flow meter, but it's a volumetric flow meter. But you can see these different meter types at certain flow rates at 105 gallons a minute. This Neptune will start just going, and it's not reading anymore.
Is this pressure?
It's flow. Yeah. And so I'll describe what's happening here in a minute. And so we can see in a 1-inch, a Badger could clip along on 120. The Neptune can't get over 110. And well, that Neptune with a Pro Coder. Here with an E-Coder, different register type, same meter, no problems whatsoever. So what we have found is that, I don't know if you remember back when we did this for all the different meters, and we found a similar sort of pattern within the meters. When we did our meter selection and we settled on the Neptune, which had 2 different options for the register. We used the E-Coder, which uses the LCD screen, which and they had the Pro Coder. And on the literature and on our bench testing, and in testing we had done in the factories tested, they performed exactly identically. But we didn't at the time test them at crazy high flow rates, way beyond the test ranges, right? Because that's just, we didn't think that through. As it turns out, in the design of the Pro Coder register, that the Pro Coder is the one that has mechanical dials. The E-Coder has this LCD, which if there's no light, you have to shine a flashlight to wake it up, and it's all this stuff on it. It's a little bit of a pain, but it just turns out that the gearing on the train of wheels that turns those mechanical dials, once that disc inside starts spinning to a certain rate, it decouples. And that's what we were hypothesizing would happen. Later, and as I'll get to one, we contacted Neptune, and it took us a while to get them to do it. They got their lab back in Alabama to do similar tests, and they said, yes, at these flow rates, which they clarified is way beyond any warranty we ever gave for the performance of this. And all these types of uses are way beyond the warranties for these size meters. And they're like, what do you mean people are doing 100 gallons a minute on a
They had a hard time. Literally, their engineers were really questioning what we were telling them about how much water was going through those meters, that they didn't register in their heads.
Right. So, but if somebody's using hundreds of meter units a month, which some users do, and you're not irrigating 24/7, you necessarily have to. We did some models on if you're irrigating, 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, or whatever, 3 hours, you can hit those peak numbers pretty quickly. Yeah. So a lot of our customers they have higher pressure, and they'll come out of a 1-inch meter or 1.5 inch meter, and they'll expand it out to a 3 or 4 inch line to get to where they're going because they want the head loss. And so what we're seeing is that, and you have the next slide here, we can show you these movies all day long.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
So when I blurted, is this pressure? I guess I was operating under the assumption that for a fixed orifice, you can get higher flow rates by increasing the pressure that you apply to the water, right?
Ahmed looked on the GIS, and it wasn't that's a factor, but a lot of it has to do with how the customer is using the water. Let's say you're taking it and you're filling a pond with it, right? And you open it up from your 1-inch meter into a 3-inch pipe, and it goes 80 yards, and then it basically daylights the atmosphere. That meter runs full out because there's not a lot of back pressure on it, and you don't need as much pressure to get there. But definitely in any given orifice, more pressure, more flow. And our system pressure is high. Our average system pressure is higher than most systems max pressure. Yeah. Right. And so that's definitely a factor here. What we found in general, and the folks at Neptune looked at, is that we can get the performance similar performance for the E-Coder or from the Badger or turbines we can get with an E-Coder register, which means we don't have to replace the meter. We just need to take the register component off and replace that. It's much faster, much cheaper than getting in there and changing all the plumbing and disconnecting everything and shutting the water off. We expect to do that. Now we've done some of these. We've put some out to test them, but it's been raining for the last month, and nobody's using any water. So we can't draw any specific conclusions to this because none of these irrigators have turned on their irrigation in some time. I've been walk out every day to the SCADA room and look if we're buying any water, and it's red. We're not buying any water from the Water Authority because our tanks are just sitting there. Can you go to the next slide? This shows some of the failure rates of when they failed and what they did. Next slide. Neptune, when they found that their the decoupling, as they call it, the E-Coder inside the register, it's a positive displacement meter, a PD meter as we call it, as opposed to a turbine. It has a nutating disc that spins around as water goes through it. One of the reasons we chose that meter is that it both has the high flow characteristics that we wanted, high flow meaning AWWA high flow, same as the other ones, but it also captures low flow. So for our customers who have a house and an ag, if you had one of the old turbine meters, a brand new turbine might capture 1.5 gallons a minute, but after use for a while, they don't get anything under about 5 gallons a minute. So we don't get any of the residential use, but we'll get the grove, but we miss all this. The PD meters were seen to be a balance between the two, but as it turned out, when we looked at the Pro Coder versus E-Coder, we had two concerns with the E-Coder at the time. One was that they're kind of a pain to use, and the other is that we had some customers, and every agency does, who look at that. Oh, that's a smart meter. You're monitoring what I'm doing. You guys in the City of Oceanside, when I see in the paper, they have a thing to where customers who don't want it pay an extra charge. They'll replace it, and they have to drive out and read it. And we're like, well, if these meters are the same, we put one with the mechanical dials in it. It has the same radio in it. We're getting the same data. They don't know that. And we assumed they would perform the same. As it turns out, they don't. And they're a better meter as long as they register at all these flow rates. And with the e-coder, they have a similar performance. So the solution to get both low and high flows is to replace the e-coders. There are some customers that are approving that we need to put where they have a 1-inch meter. They just need to get an 1.5 inch or a larger meter because they're going to eat these ones up too. A lot of these meters are rated for like 1 million gallons total flow. That's the warranty. They'll give you a warranty. It's up to 1 million gallons total through the water. Well, that's not that much for some of these users, right? These people are doing an acre foot or two a month will hit that in 6 months tops, you know? And so it's a problem. So, you know, but this came from, this is these findings from Neptune corroborated our stuff at their factory. Cause you know, we're doing it on our little test bench back here and we're like, hey guys, we're seeing this. And they're like, well, we never tested them at those flow rates. Why would we? We're like, well, we got to deal with these flow rates. Can you do it for us? And it took a little while. We got them to do it. They said, yeah, you know, when you get up about over 72 gallons a minute, they start decoupling. And then, you know, the mean flow rate for decoupling about 100 gallons a minute, which is a lot of water. If you can ever imagine, I looked at my house, even with my pool filler, which is the straightest line to it that fills my pool, I never get over 20 gallons in it, but I only got 65 PSI at my house. And I'm not trying to irrigate 5 acres. And so we believe this is the best hypothesis. Come on, next one, please. So one of the things is concentrated. 75 accounts for 50% of these losses. And we can go replace all those today. We're not getting anywhere because nobody's using it. And then the losses come from other people, but 80% of the total loss comes from under 300 meters. And so we've got a concentrated number to deal with. It was not 9,000, right? So it's just one of those freaks that we have a small number of people whose consumption patterns are so far around they're the ones that are way on the edge, but they're also the big giant users. And it had a way outsized impact on our water loss. And it wasn't anticipated because we didn't understand. And the Neptune didn't either. They're like, what do you mean decoupling? What do you mean? And they had never tested at these rates either. And so it's one of those things to where they're like, what do you, I remember that meeting we had with them. They're like, you guys wondering what gallon a minute? Huh? And we're like, well, you know, find us another reason why. If the read is coming through correctly, you know, we know these people use an obscene amount of water. I mean, hey, they're customers. I don't want to use the word obscene. They use a tremendous amount of water. This is one of the problems we're seeing.
So what's the business solution here?
Well, I'm coming on with more slides, man.
I'm ready.
I anticipated this question.
I am ready to get.
He has 20 things to
I am
discuss.
ready to get to the bottom line here. Sounds like we have a warranty issue, a
here we go.
technical issue, et cetera.
We're getting to that.
All right.
So one of the things is that we use PDs just everywhere. And so one of the things that for the ag only customers who don't have a house, Ahmed has gone through a sort of that. We're gonna look at those. Let's just put a turbine there because that turbines will last longer. A turbine meter, the way it's set up, when it transmits to the dial, it has a 10-to-1 gear ratio. Whereas the PD meters, it's a 1-to-1. So turbine meter dials it down. So that meter, that thing up top is spinning 1/10 as fast as the turbine underneath it. And so they don't experience the decoupling even with the Pro Coder dial. So that's one thing to do. Install e-coders and registers with the PD meters with high losses to start with, and then keep an eye and then actively monitor everything else, you know, which I say here, it's hard to do with the wet weather. Robert's put a bunch in already to look at, not anywhere near 300, but nobody's used anything. And so we can't draw a conclusion, but the goal is to correct the issue prior to the summer irrigation season coming up. So next slide. We're still working out with Neptune on cost sharing. I told them that I would like to help them participate in this. The challenge we have is that we're so far outside their warranted specs that they're like, dude, you bought them. Here's the warranty. We never said nobody. Well, no meter manufacturer has a meter that would do this, right? And so that's going to be a trickier one. And the lead time is 4 to 5 months to get these e-coder registers. And we asked about expediting, and they're like, well, these days the word expedite doesn't mean a whole lot. Supply chain. And so we're in the process of getting some of these things ordered. We're finalizing the numbers. There's the 299 priority accounts. Some of those we may say, you know what, for now, we're going to stick that we can get, if we can get Badger meters, whatever we can get the fastest, let's put them in there. I actually drove to India last Friday to pick up, just do our final test on an 1.5 inch e-coder meter, which is the only one they could find. And it happened to be me doing the driving because I had a couple meetings that morning that I could do from the phone, from the car driving. And it was a beautiful day. There was snow at the top there, going up the 371 and down to the desert. Beautiful drive. Picked up a meter, turned right back around and drove back over here. And that's some of the testing they did here today. And that testing they did verify with this 1.5 inches. They could clip along at 120, but also down to 3/4 gallon a minute. What was it?
160 is the max and
Half a gallon a minute. And so that meter, PD ecoder meter, is awesome for what we want. It'll do the low flow. That's why we chose it. And it'll do this ridiculously high flow, 160 gallons a minute, and accurately read. And so it is the right meter. It was the wrong register. And so I know that Neptune doesn't want us having a whole lot of PowerPoint presentations about how their meters, that ProCoder meter design stinks. And so it'll be in their interest to smooth this out. You know, they know that Robert and I speak at conferences on regular occasions and that this stuff comes up, and meter manufacturers never want bad news traveling. So I expect to get something from them. Even if we don't get a penny from them, this is a financial mess that we need to get resolved. So we're in communication with them to get these things ordered. We have the final tallies going on because, like I said, I just got the last meter last Friday. We've been a hard time getting some of this stuff to test, and it's just this whole supply chain thing. And I'd hoped that we could have with the ones we have put in to see real world examples from the same people that had really low use with a ProCoder, see their use go back up with the eCoder. But it's been like raining ever since we put them in December. The first ones are late November, early December. But it's hard to, you know, we're working on a hypothesis as to something that we have a hypothesis. We did this thing and then we showed the result. There's no result to show because nobody's been using any water for the last 6 weeks. But I think that after all the testing we've done and what Neptune confirmed, and that data we got back from them 2 weeks ago, I think, because it took us a while to get them to, hey, you guys need to engage on this. They're like, what are you guys talking about? And so our goal is to get as many of the first 300 done as soon as possible. And that's going to be as soon as, if I got to drive out to Dang, Alabama in a pickup truck and pick those things up and drive them back, I'll do that too, or whatever. We've got to find them, or if we can find some in inventory at some other water district around the country, somebody's sitting on some, and some big agency like Chicago or somewhere like that that has hundreds of them, that we can say, look, we need 50 of them from you. Hey, Omaha, you got 20. All right. You know, on the way back, Salt Lake City, you got some. Even if we got to resort to that sort of stuff to go find what we can get so that we can beat when irrigation starts again, because just waiting for them to get produced at the factory may not get us the satisfactory results. And so it's an unusual thing, and Robert's had to do it at my request to call other agencies and say, hey, you got one of these things, Bell? You know, I need it. Can I meet you at the corner and you can get me this meter? But and it's a disappointing thing. You know, obviously when you do a big project, you learn some stuff, and we learned the hard way that if our customers don't like us to read, well, too bad. We're going to have these meters out there. So that's the information I have for you right now.
Regardless of who participates how financially, what's the cost of this fix?
Well, we're looking at for 300 of these, and I think those registers go for
About 150 a piece.
150 a copy?
So if you're probably 300, you're probably in the 50,000 plus or minus $5.
Right,
each
but
way.
to get 80% of that revenue loss back, theoretically, you know, you're talking $1 million, you know.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that.
Well, and actually, we didn't get the revenue. That's $1 million we're paying to the water, or you know,
So the
1.1.
So the equipment cost is around 50,000 plus the heart plus the labor
Yeah.
to install.
But if it's just the registers, that's a quick and easy one. Our guys can knock that out real fast.
Is this an item where the manufacturer can, I'm just going to be blunt, can pull out the buzzword and increase the cost by 50% by saying, you know, supply chain, which, you know, I'm not buying it, but
I think there's an incentive for them, and I've made that fairly clear to them in some meetings, that they don't want us I've worked with meter manufacturers for the last 30 years.
Just mealy mouth in their
They-
project.
They don't
Right.
want anybody, they want to say, hey, Rainbow's a success story. Look at that. They just switched over stuff. Call those guys as a reference. They just put in all our stuff. You want us saying, and they want us to say, hey, yeah, we had some problem with this, but those guys stepped up and took care of it for us. As opposed to saying, man, they sold us, and I told them flat out, I go, you guys presented these meters as being the same. And every spec that they produce and every warranty is the same. Just that we're using outside the warranty, and one works better than the other at these extreme usage levels.
Understand. But at the end of the day, this was a $9 million project, right? Roughly, plus or minus?
Yeah, for a little more than that, but with all
Right.
the meters, with all
Okay,
the boxes.
10 or 11 million,
Yeah,
something like
whatever
that.
it is, yeah.
Okay. And we've got a $50,000 problem here. Okay.
To resolve the.
Which produces a multi-million-dollar problem in terms of the water loss, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's
So-
just over $1 million. And that's the basis of the whole.
So we
payback.
just,
We gotta do it.
we got to do it. I
Right.
mean, there's just no, even if we have to carry the whole cost ourselves, the payback on it
Oh,
is
yeah.
very
I
quick.
mean,
Because instead of it being a $10 million project, it's a $10 million,
we ain't going
$50,000
through next
project.
summer without this thing resolved, because
right.
we just can't, that's untenable, because we can't go back to the same non-revenue water level we were at before WASUP. Because that was the basis for,
Right.
getting the money and doing it, because
So
there's an ROI.
this is gonna delay our payback, and
It-
that's just,
But it's,
it's still an aggressive project.
it was an aggressive project, and I think that the choice for the T10 with the PD meter is the right one for this area, especially with large residential ag. And it wasn't like 4,000 of the meters were underperforming. The most of the loss came from, and we always say in the water business, 80% of the water is used by 20% of your people. And it's never quite like that, but there's a small cohort of people that are responsible for an oversized amount of consumption. And this is what runs us into trouble when we get into the variable fixed rate thing. As soon as you look at that chart, boy, this is a small group of people get hit with all this. And so these are those folks. None of them called to say, man, my water use went way down last month. Weirdly, my bill's been great.
Yeah.
And it was strange that it came out. Ahmed's also working on some other metrics to do more analytics on a month-to-month basis so that we can try to spot these trends even earlier. But that's so hard to do on a month-to-month because people's use changes month-to-month based on the weather, based on what they're doing, based on so many other variables. That's why it's the cleanest data is when you can aggregate a larger sample size and a yearly thing to take a look at what you got. So it took us a long time to figure this one out because everything checked out. The reads checked out. The meters we pulled out and had tested by McCall's and tested ourselves checked out. And we're like, what is going on here? And then Carlos noticed that one day and so he was, ooh, let's test that out.
Okay, well, I assume that
We haven't pitched
We'll hear
this to the
more.
board yet.
we'll hear more.
We're going to also present this information to the board at the February meeting, because like I said, we've just been finishing this
okay.
data and I wanted to make sure we had a good handle on the hypothesis. We also wanted to get Neptune's validation of our
Right.
testing here in our yard. And that corroborated what we were seeing. And so it's unfortunate, but I think we have a good game plan. Now will be the scouring for these E-coder.
Yeah, I mean, it's mainly about lickety split right now. We just
Lickety
gotta-
split is
we gotta
it.
go, we
And
gotta go.
that's a problem with everything these days is lickety split when you're trying to buy something
Right.
is tough.
Okay. Very interesting. Look forward to hearing how that progresses. Thank you. That's very informative. Item number 16. Notice of completion for Malabar Ranch Development.
Thank you. So this is recommended to go before the board at the February meeting. It's one of two engineering consent items. It's a notice of completion for a developer project. This one is a bit unique in that the developer died during the construction process. Fortunately, the infrastructure was all in there. The punch list just hadn't been finished. And it took district staff more than 2 years to get in touch with someone that could actually speak on the developer's behalf. So we're a little behind the 8 ball on when we would normally bring this to the board, but it's straightforward housekeeping item. The project is in, it's done, it's been built per the plans and specs, and we're ready to accept it into the system. I think the only caveat is we are waiving the 1-year warranty because we've had a much longer warranty.
We've only been using it for umpty years.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Do any committee members have any questions about this item? I'm looking for a motion.
A motion to recommend approval to the board.
Right. Right. I'll
I,
move it. I'll move it. I move that the committee recommend the board adopt option one as recommended by the staff. Is there a second?
second,
Dawn?
Member Brazier,
Reluctantly, aye.
Member Johnson,
aye.
Member Nelson,
Aye.
and alternate Largen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 17, another notice of completion for the cathodic protection,
A little bit more exciting. This was the first,
Rainbow Valley Boulevard.
yes, this was the first cathodic protection project that Rainbow has ever embarked on, and it is completed. It's in the ground. Malik was the project manager on this one. He's working with the contractor who's going to come out. I don't think we've done the lunch and learn where they're going to come out and do the whole thing. Rain and everything else, holidays have attracted that, but we're already working on not only where is the next cathodic protection project going to go, where ours is the next 6 or 12 projects going to go. So this is a notice of completion to release the contractor, and staff is asking the committee to recommend to the board that they also accept this with staff's recommendation of option 1.
I think I wanted to add to that the next series of projects is also important to keep in the funnel, because when we did our condition assessment, the corrosion was obviously one of the larger things, and installing CP is a lot cheaper than installing pipelines, and you can protect miles and miles of pipeline with a project like this. And so as a cost-effective way to bridge until eventual pipeline replacement funds are available, this is a way to help reduce leakage and main breaks going forward. So I think that the focus, I think the next one is going to be done as part of one of the pump stations that we have coming in. So that's already in design. And then the other ones will be following those going forward.
Any questions from committee members?
If you're looking for a motion, I move to approve option 1.
Thank you, Helene. Thank you.
Second,
Okay. Am I allowed to ask a question after we have moved and seconded? Well, I don't want to violate parliamentary.
No discussion is always in order.
This is purely an informational point. So, because I'm in favor of the item. So, how many feet of pipe did our $550,000 protect?
Happened between the 2 pump stations. Do you know?
Give me 1 second.
All right, Robert's going to pull up the plans for us. It goes from the Rainbow Hills pump station to the Rainbow Heights pump station. So we'll get you that linear footage.
Because my only question would be, as we move forward, we are looking at, I mean, I recognize terrain is variable, but ultimately you can do a rule of thumb that it's costing us X number of pennies or cents or dollars per foot of pipe protected. And over time, would it be inappropriate for me to expect that as we get more experience in doing this and we potentially expand our group of available contractors, that we can begin to drive our cost per unit down by learning more about what we're doing and getting a better sense and getting better design? I just don't know. I'm asking.
Just over 1.5 miles.
Mile and a half.
Of pipeline being buried. And this is impressed current. So this has
Right.
the deep well anodes and then electrical current pushing through. So
Right.
sacrificial anodes without impressed current would be cheaper.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
that, I mean, this design, we had no change orders on this project, correct?
No.
Yeah, so the design was good. The contractor was good.
Mhm.
It does depend on how far you want to push this current, how deep
Right.
those wells need to be.
And there's also other things with interaction with other impressed current systems. If you're near the water authority or SDG&E, that
Correct.
gets a little weird,
Yes.
but you can push these even further if you don't have other interactions in that area. There are
Other interaction.
natural gas lines. And so you can't put as much voltage per se on as you might in somewhere where there's nothing, and you could push this stuff long distance.
Yes.
And so, thank you.
Yes.
My second question, information only. I realize these things, it's hard to measure something that you don't do, but I am idly curious. How much have we extended the life of this pipe by doing this as opposed to replacing, which we know the cost of replacing is huge. I get
I
that.
was gonna
but-
call on
but
Tom,
yeah,
so.
Yeah,
so
so
what are we looking at here in
when you,
terms of?
when you put an impressed current system on there on a pipeline like this, you essentially stop any external corrosion. Sorry, as long as it's properly functioning and running, the galvanic reaction cannot occur on the exterior surface of the pipe. This doesn't mean that you couldn't have somebody hit it with a backhoe, or that if there was a big pressure surge that came through and there was a weak spot, that would cause a leak. But
Or
it's
if the damage was already so
so
severe.
severe that it's at a weak spot, and then, but it essentially will arrest the condition of the pipe in its current thing, which is not leaking. It can help, but it can't eliminate challenges from internal corrosion.
I was about to ask.
And
that.
so internal corrosion is more difficult for that to do, because it also reacts with the galvanic reaction with the soil on the ground as opposed to the pipe and the water surface.
Right.
Although it does help because it doesn't have the dueling problems occurring. So
But would,
where you have joints, but
but would it be safe to say that in general, we're probably looking at measuring this in decades
Yes.
rather than
yes.
years or
So,
weeks or months?
The only
decades.
experience I have is when I
And that's a good thing.
I used to work at Liebenhain when I started there in '99, but in the late '80s, they put in cathodic protection throughout the system, and they had charts on their leak rate that went way down. And what we found in my personal experience working there almost 15 years is that on pipes that had impressed current protection on them, we rarely saw any kind of problem from external leak, and some of them were quite old. As another point of example, one of the reasons we have the challenging conditions here for corrosion is the nature of the soil, because you got bedrock and you got this kind of clay stuff on it, and the water, when water, it's in a wet area, like this pipe was highlighted because in the Rainbow Valley area, it's kind of a low spot there, and they've got high groundwater tables, and there's also some stuff in the groundwater there that ain't so awesome. That was one of the high priority items. When I worked in the city of Vernon, we had metallic pipelines that were installed around 1900, 1905, but it's sugar sand there near the LA River, dry as a bone. You could take a garden hose and pour it in a trench and it just keeps going. That pipeline looks like the day it went in. And so it's about your soil conditions. So we have pipelines, the high priority ones that are pipelines are going to be in areas that go through wetter areas that need the protection. Something that's high and dry on the top of a mountain somewhere, less of a priority. So that's where these next ones will go. And so it can have a bigger benefit in some areas than in other areas. And that's what the prioritization that was led through by the condition assessment will lead us to get there.
Well, I ask those questions mainly because we have a new board member, and it just strikes me that she might not know exactly what this is, and to point out that an expenditure of $500,000 sounds like a lot of money, but we are basically delaying the need to replace X million dollars worth of pipe for not weeks, not months, not years, but decades. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
Right.
Just a
And
suggestion.
I agree that we can improve on it. At Liebenhain, we did end up with our own crews we bought an auger attachment
Right.
for a backhoe that we can go out and drill these shallower wells, not the real deep one we needed here, but shallower wells, drop the anodes and replace them, and then they just get the rectifier hooked up. And in some cases, we actually had to put irrigation systems on to get a little water in there, because it improves. If there's a little bit of moisture, it improves the
it.
electrical connectivity
Right.
in there. And so it's a science to it. But I think there, as with anything, as we move forward, there might be insourcing opportunities. Some of the electrical work is specialized, but the fundamentals of cathodic protection are pretty straightforward, and it's just a matter of building the capacity to do it, or getting more familiar with some of the contractors in the space, which this is our first one, and then tailoring the projects to meet their capabilities in a way that can make it more efficient, or bundling them in different ways, or figuring out another way. So I do expect, as in most things, the first time you do something is usually
Right.
not the most efficient time.
Right,
to do it.
right. That's what I was driving at, is that
Yeah.
we can. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and so therefore, Dawn, I think we should go ahead and do the roll call here to adopt option one, which is the staff recommendation, and recommend option one to the board.
Okay. Member Brazier,
As a supporter of cathodic protection, an enthusiastic aye.
Oh,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member Nelson,
Aye.
and alternate Largent.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 18, CIP update, PowerPoint.
Maybe pull it up. So I don't know, probably 6-8 months ago, we, the committee asked for the CIP project update. We did that and we said we'd bring it back at least twice a year. So we're starting off the beginning of the year. So this committee will see this again in 2023, late summer, early fall, something like that, but want to go over the different CIP projects that we have going on. Ahmed, are you going to hit the clicker for me? Thank you so much. So here's the district boundaries and it shows the different projects. These are the active projects. We have 12 of them, and then not listed are projects that are district wide. So as this committee knows, on these board memos that we write, we say which division the project is in, but when it's all divisions, we obviously don't put the pin there. And those projects that are all divisions that are going on right now is the San Luis Rey Groundwater Recovery Project, the Manual Transfer Switch Project, and the Water System Monitoring Program, and lastly, tank maintenance.
Mhm.
All right, so just kind of give some order of magnitude of how much money we're talking about that we deal with. On the potable project, a little over 7 million. On the wastewater side, almost 11 million. And then the wholesale water efficiency, 4.7 million. So that's a substantial CIP budget. Thank you, Tracy. All right. Yeah. Can you move that? Thank you so much, Ahmed. So the first project is the San Luis Rey imported return flow recovery. And so the last time we gave this, Director Gasca asked about, could you include some safety information on these projects? And so these bullet points, if the committee would like to see, we don't need to see that bullet point, or could you add a different bullet point? We're open to the committee's feedback. This is what we thought was the most relevant. So it gives you the current phase. So this one is in planning. There's many different tasks associated with that. We're at about 5% complete. We have a milestone meeting coming up in another 2 or 3 weeks. There is no safety because the project hasn't really started yet. We're designing. Might be a paper cut, but that's not reportable, so we're all right. And then we gave the approved budget for the fiscal year 22-23, which is 600,000, and then how much we've spent to date. We're running at 6% and no change orders at this time. If anyone on the committee has any questions as I'm going through this, please just interrupt me. And
Who's the project manager?
on this project is Amanda Parra.
That might be nice.
Okay, list the project manager.
Yeah.
Okay,
Give
We
him
can
some
do that.
Give them some headline juice.
There you
right?
go.
All right.
Okay, the next one, the water system monitoring program. About 55% complete. This is replacing all the SCADA radios throughout the district. No reportable accidents on this one. Project is going very well. We are right on track on that spending. I just met with the finance manager a couple of weeks ago to go over the mid-year budget, and we are tracking perfectly on this one. And again, no change orders. The Camino del Rey waterline relocation, one of my favorite ones to report on, because you'll see this is like a $3.5 million project, but you'll see we're only allocating 25,000. That's for staff time and legal fees. We got some really good news from the County of San Diego, but it's at a staff level. We're asking that a director put it on county letterhead and resupply it. The district believes that it has senior rights on Camino del Rey, and therefore all expenses to relocate its water line should be at the county's expense. Not the case we're dealing with on the Live Oak Park Bridge project or the Rainbow Water Quality project. So we did get some really good news on this one, that they actually agree with us. And they said, about how much is your engineer's estimate on us? And when we said 3.5 million, they about fell out of their chair. So good news on this one. And they are making some headway on this project. So we had started with design way back when. We put that to a stop, but the county has the same design engineer. So that data was gladly given to them on that one.
Who's the project manager?
That one is also Amanda.
Okay. And the SCADA project is?
Ahmed. And I'm Ahmed's assistant on that one.
Keep going.
What's that? A mentor. No, I'm your assistant on that one. All right. Chairperson Nelson's favorite project, and the one Julie desperately wants to go visit, the Live Oak Park Bridge replacement. So we're in construction. It's hazard construction out there. We're about 40% complete. A lot of our work is dependent on the county's portion of the project, which is reconstructing the bridge. So the 16-inch has been abandoned. They're installing those fasteners to the sides right now. And then once they progress farther along with the bridge, the contractor will segue over to the 8-inch water lines. We have 2 water lines on that bridge, and no reportable accidents. Amanda is also the project manager on this one. And there have been 2 change orders on this project. And those were because the county omitted those details, the pipeline and the fittings, when they had told district staff all along that it would be a part of the design. So that was very unfortunate.
On that project, do we have any sense as to when that's going to be complete?
Actually, I believe, Amanda, are you unmuted? I think, did we just do a 0 cost change order to extend the contract on this one?
Wasn't on this one. We will be working on a no cost. As of right now, our contract runs through the end of February, but it's looking like the county's bridge project will not be finished until April, which ultimately impacts our 8-inch water line. So April will be the soonest. Again, as Chad had mentioned, this is contingent upon the county's bridge project, which has slipped by at least a couple months due to rain and some of the challenges that Hazard Construction has encountered out there.
And our fate is tied to the county. So, I mean, yeah, I got it. I got it. Okay. Next. Thank you, Amanda.
All right. The Rainbow Water Quality Improvement Project. This is the title that I hate the most.
Which isn't.
It's the groundwater issue Tom was actually just talking about. Uh-oh. We're coming back to life. All right. Can everyone that's viewing via
Yeah.
Zoom see it?
Roll it.
Okay. So we're in construction on this. We just had the progress meeting. Progress is about 35% complete. Amanda Parr is the project manager on this one as well. Malik is responsible for a lot. I guess these are just maybe in order of the PM or something. I don't know. Number of days without a safety is 57. Project just got underway. 0 reportable accidents. There's your budget, $920,000, and we spent about 3%. No change orders at this time. The Gomez and
What's 25 words or less? What's the scope of work on that?
this is the county is installing some new culverts to improve the stormwater runoff. And so we have to relocate water lines and water services.
Got it. Thank you.
Gomez and McGee pump station upgrades. These are the emergency generators. These are great shots. So you can see the concrete pads that had been poured where the generators that, thank you, Ahmed, showing right there. And then the lower one, it's a little bit farther away from the transformer right there. That's McGee on the lower picture. So 40% complete. We actually just got really good news from the Air Pollution Control District. I think I got that acronym or agency name right. APCD, Air Pollution Control District. So we had to get permission from them to transport the generators. They're not running. You can't even transport it to the site without their permission. Then they have to give us a second letter of approval, letting them go online. So we're actively working on those 2 things. So we got the notice to transport, I believe, 1 of the 2. So we're working on the second one, but that's going very well.
Wouldn't it be ironic if they gave us permission to operate before they gave us permission
Yeah.
to transport?
I wouldn't be
I'm just
shocked at
waiting for
all.
that to
I wouldn't
happen.
be
Just
surprised at
Waiting
all.
for that. Okay.
I can't make this stuff up. I mean,
I know,
it's
I know.
if it didn't cause me headaches, it would be funny. All right, let's go to the next one, Ahmed. The Sumac Communications Tower and Photovoltaic Backup System. So this is the district's first design build project. And so as many of the committee members that went on the district-wide tour, we actually took everyone to this site. So this is underway right now. We just had a page-turning review of the design today with the IT and operations department. So this project is moving along very well, right on track. The Rice Canyon Tank Pipeline, right? You're not going to hear about this one for much longer. This one is, we're like 85% complete. Just a couple more things we're waiting on supply chain, believe it or not. A couple more things to arrive. And then this one will be done. There's a specialty flow meter. It's called the Tiger Mag meter. That had an extremely long lead time. And then we're installing some photovoltaic cells to the top of the tank. And so that's all underway. But that little small brick building, the comms building, all the conduits been ran. It's going very, very well.
And the meter can handle high flows, right?
That meter is built to handle high flows. Tiger Mags are pretty cool.
They also cost like $10,000.
Yeah, true. All right. And then the manual transfer switches project. So we're in design, about 20% complete. This is, we've showed this committee the pictures before where our electricians have to suit up in these fireproof suits. Ahmed has a great photo of Ed Bradley actually in the suit. They only use one arm to do it, extremely dangerous. And so this project will get us away from having to do all of that. So underway. The lift station 1 replacement, a Malik project, going, knock on wood, going very, very well. We're about 60% complete. There has been one reportable accident. Do you happen to know what that accident was?
That was basically the caving.
Oh, okay.
Took out power to
No,
the area and internet through River
Okay.
Village for a while.
So yeah,
They had a trench, nobody's in it, and it just sloughed off and took out some of the conduits that were parallel near it.
So we reported it, but there were no injuries, which is very, very fortunate. So we're trucking along on this one. There have been 5 change orders to date, some in the positive, some credits back to the district. But we're out of the gas station and we're making our way over. This one, it very interestingly enough, in Flint, in that meeting that you had with Robert and me back in December, and we were talking about the supply chain, try and find ductile iron pipe anywhere right now. And they're blaming the war in Ukraine on why we can't get it. So we actually had Malik, Paul, the construction manager, and myself took the contractor out to lunch and said, we are going to find this pipe. And we finally found the diameter pipe that we needed to find. So it's incredible right now. The supply chain is not getting better right now. Do you have a?
No, just Robert, there's a possible leak going on.
Okay. Radio's gonna start blowing up. All right.
By the way, who is the PM on the manual switch?
Amanda.
Yep.
Take maintenance and fall protection. So this is through our contract. It used to be Suez. They are now Veolia. They just switched their name.
But that's just a name change, right?
Yeah, well, it was utility services.
They've had many name changes.
But same
people that they're different international companies buy
Right.
these things up.
Yeah, got it.
They all
This
get
is
different business.
ongoing. So we're standardizing how we run the conduits up the tank. We get the antenna mast at the top. We get the fall protection around the top. So the tanks, they all are getting stairs. So we're going away from a ladder. And then some of those stairs are getting security cages. So this is ongoing work all throughout the district. It's going very well. The Hutton and Turner and Dentro de Lomas pump station project. So Malik is the project manager on this one. We're in the design phase. We're farther than 15% design. I think we made this PowerPoint a while ago. We're coming up on 90% for these 3 pump stations in design. And we just placed an order with EFI. We took this to our board. It came before this committee. I think it was in early 2020. And then the board to sole source to EFI. We actually placed an order for the Hutton and Turner pump stations yesterday.
I signed the docs yesterday.
There you go. So those EFI originally had told us 25 weeks of lead time. And then about 3 weeks ago, they told us it's now 62 weeks of lead time. And it's the electrical components is the major driving factor. So we're going to work out of sequence. Normally you'd get a submittal package of the entire pump station. We would review it. They're now going to give us the longest lead time item submittals first. We'll review and approve those and get the ball rolling. So, but this is a really good architectural rendering of what the Turner one is slated to look like. It'll have 2 buildings because the Turner pump station will have an on-site emergency generator there for it. So that's why there will be 2 buildings at that one. It's going very well. And then the Weiss water treatment plant, permanent emergency interconnect, another pump station project, finalizing design. Right now, Malik just had a meeting with the design engineer not that long ago. 100% is right around the corner. So this one, when we go to This is a pump skid, so it's not in a prefabbed building. And so we're actually going to go out with a performance spec, just like we did on the emergency generators, so that anyone that builds these pump skids can give us a bid on this one, and we'll go from there.
I want to add a little to this.
Sure.
As you may recall, last month, the board adopted our agreement with Oceanside, and we're going through with Oceanside, but there's one small ministerial action that the Water Authority has in these sorts of interconnects related to how the billing is going to happen. Like if you use water, tell us how much, and just the mechanics of it. This is done between agencies all around the county. It's something that doesn't take any problem. Lindsay Leahy with Oceanside's been trying to set up being with the Water Authority just to finalize this last little bit since October. And we've been delayed. And they said, we're too busy on another thing, but give us 90 days. And we're supposed to have a meeting a couple weeks ago. That got moved to today. 3 hours before the meeting, I got a call from the Water Authority's general counsel. Says, and they set up a meeting. We're like, why are we having all these people? It was the Water Authority's general manager, assistant general manager, director of water resources, director of operations, director of engineering, and the general counsel. We're like, what's going on here? And we've been asking for weeks. What's going on? This is usually something that's straightforward.
Pro forma.
Yeah, and it is. I've done them myself, and Lindsay does them with other Carlsbad, for example, and they wouldn't tell us. Oh, it's a contract issue. We're like, what are you talking about? This is between us. You guys just keep track of the billing. Turns out, I got a call from their general counsel. Says, well, I just want to set expectations for today, but this whole detachment thing. This says, that puts a cloud on everything. We can't even think about this because of detachment. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We've been working on this since before detachment. This has been in our CIP since like 2015 or 16, all these pump stations. And we're like, what are you talking about? And Oceanside's like, what are you guys talking about? Because they stand to gain money. If we buy water through there, it lowers their per unit treatment cost. That's the whole basis of this thing. And for us, every time they do a shutdown, we've got to rig up all our temporary pumps again. This isn't a huge pump station. This is a teeny tiny one compared to those other ones. And it's just mainly designed for emergencies and to take water when they've got excess supplies and say, hey, we can take it and it's good for everybody. And couldn't get them to budge the whole meeting.
Yeah.
And they said, Chad was in it. He's like, pound your head against
it was horrible.
I'm like, well, there's just two scenarios here. One is we're still a member agency and we failed to detach, and one that we detached. This one, we all know what happens. We're not even having this meeting. This other one, what do you want to talk about? What are these issues you're worried about? And it really comes down to, I think, that they just don't want it. They want to just be
It's extortion.
Yeah, they just want us to pay.
What it is.
Pay for disloyalty. And I'm like, we can all walk and chew gum here at the same time. There's an issue here. It really comes down to, if we detach, then they need to do the paperwork to handle the wheeling transaction, a transportation charge to move it there based on where their wheeling rate is. And they have an existing wheeling agreement with the Indian Water Authority to move the Indian water down. And that's lower than the transportation charge that they charge all of us. So it could be somewhere between, I don't know. And maybe they'd say, well, we need it to be like super high, which would be illegal, but they just won't talk about it until the detachment's done, which is just, it's frustrating for us and Oceanside because because detachment process is going, it doesn't mean that we don't have an obligation to provide highly reliable supplies. And for us, reliability is not whether it's the Colorado or Northern California. It's when you guys keep shutting down these pipelines, we have to deliver the water still. And now we have to get hoses in Robert's seen it when he ran the plant there into their clear well and rig up these pumps and all that sort of rigmarole, which is expensive and just not the right way to go about it in the long run. And the fact that it's been done that way here for decades is beside the point. We've been trying to get beyond that. And it's extremely frustrating to me after working on this for so many years, and we're there and ready to go, worked out all the things with Oceanside and their real estate department and all the terms of the agreement. And then there was an interaction with VID because VID has access to the plant too. We got all that stuff sorted out. And then the water says, yeah, we're just not going to talk about it. Attachment. And Lindsay's recommendation, I should keep track of all of our costs that have occurred because we can't build this, all these temporary costs that we would be avoiding. Of course, I'm never going to be able to send a bill to the Water Authority, but it's just frustrating. So if anybody from the Water Authority is listening, I am frustrated by their lack of ability to separate two different things.
It's an ethics issue, Tom. It's an ethics issue.
I think it's just petty and vindictive.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We are ready to build this as soon as we get the green.
But it's tiny little thing on a little sliver of land. I mean, it's the damn building is third the size of this room. I mean, it's tiny.
Frustrating.
Frustrating is right.
That's in my home state of Louisiana, back in the days of Earl Long, we would have handled that with the deduct box, but we'll just have to move on.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
Okay.
We could just build it, but
Yeah.
then if they become, well, we're not gonna deliver because you guys, and it's like,
But we have 4 other ways to get the water.
there are other ways, you know,
Right.
but this is one where there's a treatment plant in our service area, right across the street from one of our tanks that has the capacity to serve there and elsewhere in our system. And they got capacity they'd like to sell us. And we're like, hey, that'd be super handy.
Yeah.
Sometimes. But anyway, I digress.
Continue.
That is it.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions.
What a great swan song. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Any questions from any members of the committee? Hearing none, we'll move forward to item number 19, the as needed summary. I don't see.
Julie Johnson,
Oh,
just said she needs to leave to another meeting she has to attend.
okay. Julie is, yeah, I think we are. There's no yellow on here, so we have no new tasks. We just have a bunch of blank spots because we just loaded up a bunch of.
Yep.
I think I added it up to 1.1 or 1.3 million dollars worth of as needed capability. So
Correct.
we've got
We-
nothing.
12 new consultants on board with new
Exactly.
contracts. And we're
Exactly.
working on a CM and inspection one that's going to go out here very soon as well.
In the interest of time, I'd like to ask you a question after the meeting. It's just a purely informational item, but list of agenda items for the next time. I'm not seeing anything that flows out of this agenda other than the CIP summary. So I think we're looking to Chad and Robert for whatever you think is going to be coming up. All right. I mean, we got the meter thing.
Yeah, I can give it up, you know, where we are.
Yeah, meter update. Okay. And as needed update.
That we're reducing water loss because if nobody's using any water, it's hard to measure zero from
Understand.
zero.
I think probably we have more interest, as do you, on the business side.
right.
What are we doing? Because whether we start pumping water through those meters now or 2
We
months
just gotta
from now,
get
3
moving
months
on it.
from now, we need the stuff.
Right,
So we need
the
to figure
stuff.
out how we're getting the stuff.
The stuff.
All right. So does anybody have any other items? Okay, otherwise I'll leave it to the staff, you guys. And so I think we are at item 21, which is adjournment. So we'll just declare QED. Let's quit and eat dinner.
Boom.
Boom. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
There's an area where we